Look into my eyes and I'll show you an animal smarter than you. Okay, maybe not smarter than you, but definitely smarter than you think. What you're looking at is a picture of my dog. But what you're actually looking at is a picture of an animal with a brain the size of yours. Yeah, really. Dogs have roughly the same number of neurons as humans do. And when researchers at Duke University scanned my dog's brain with an fMRI machine, they saw activity in the same areas that light up when humans use language. This is just one example of the startling discoveries we're making about the inner lives of animals. Discoveries that are forcing us to completely rethink who's really in charge around here. For a long time, most scientists believed that human-like intelligence was a uniquely human trait. We used to think that other animals were basically mindless automatons, going through their days on instinct. But now, thanks to some very clever detective work, we're learning that other animals are a lot smarter than we give them credit for. And it turns out that some of our closest animal relatives are a lot more like us than we ever imagined. Take, for example, our canine companions. Scientists used to think that dogs could learn only a few hundred words of verbal commands. But new research suggests that they can learn thousands of words, just like toddlers. And they don't just obey commands. They understand what we're saying to them. In one study, when researchers told their dogs that a toy was in a certain place, the dogs believed them even if they'd previously seen the toy placed somewhere else. That's because dogs are capable of understanding the concept of false beliefs. But how can we possibly know what other animals are thinking? After all, they can't exactly tell us. The key, it turns out, is to look beyond outward behavior. Because just like people, animals can use symbols to represent things in the world around them. For example, a bird that's seen a cat may start acting differently when it sees a dog, even though the dog isn't actually dangerous. That's because the bird has categorized the dog as a potential threat, based on its previous experience, to see inside the animal mind. Scientists are developing new ways to test animal cognition. One popular method is to present animals with a series of symbols and then track their eye movements to see which ones they find most interesting. Another approach is to train animals to perform simple tasks on computers, such as matching shapes or colors. These cognitive tests have revealed some surprising results. For example, dogs are better at recognizing human faces than they are at recognizing other dogs, and parrots can understand the concept of zero even though they've never attended a math lecture. One of the most exciting recent discoveries is that some animals are capable of something we've long thought to be uniquely human: problem solving. For example, a group of researchers at the University of Cambridge set up a series of experiments to test the intelligence of a pair of African gray parrots. The birds were presented with a puzzle box that didn't open until they completed a task, such as rotating a disc or pulling a lever. At first, the birds struggled to figure out how to solve the puzzles, but over time, they began to understand the relationship between their actions and the reward they received. And eventually, they were able to apply this knowledge to new situations. In fact, these birds are so smart that they can plan ahead. In one experiment, the birds were given a choice between receiving a piece of fruit now or a more rewarding treat later. The birds almost always chose the bigger reward, even if it meant waiting up to 2 hours for it. But perhaps the most astonishing discovery is that some animals are capable of something that we've long thought to be a uniquely human trait: planning for the future. Researchers at the University of Oxford presented a group of dogs with a task that required them to perform a series of actions in the correct order to obtain a reward. At first, the dogs struggled to figure out the correct sequence, but over time, they began to understand what needed to be done, and eventually, they were able to apply this knowledge to new situations. These animals aren't just reacting to their environment, they're actively solving problems and planning for the future. So the next time you look into the eyes of a dog, a parrot, or any other animal, remember that what you're really looking at is a mind that is just as complex and fascinating as our own. We used to think that other animals were basically mindless automatons, going through their days on instinct. But now we know that that couldn't be further from the truth. Other animals are a lot smarter than we give them credit for. And it turns out that some of our closest animal relatives are a lot more like us than we ever imagined.